Hi everyone, Ted Wyman here with another edition of On the Rocks, where we talk about Canadian curling. And I'm very happy today to have as my guest one of the top skips in Canadian men's curling, Matt Dunstone. Matt joins us from Calgary, where his team is practicing and getting ready for a big season. And Matt, how are you doing, buddy?
Ted, doing very well. Getting back into the swing of things again, and looking forward for to our event, first event of the year. Obviously, new team. So, it's always exciting getting on the ice for the first time.
Well, you talk about you having a new team. You are certainly not alone in Canadian curling this year, coming in with a new team. And we have seen changes often in the year after an Olympic quadrennial wraps up, but I don't think it's ever been quite like this. This was like a blow up of pretty much every team in the country and a reformation. What's that like? And what's it going to be like this year with all these new teams feeling out the process?
Yeah, I think I mean, it's super exciting for fans and people who follow the sport, and trying to keep up with everything that's gone on, because it's awfully difficult too. Like you said, everybody pretty much made a switch. But it's going to be very interesting to see just all these new combinations. A lot of them you never would have guessed that those would have become a thing, and sure enough, here we are. And like just the new storylines that come with it, right? The Harnden brothers get to play against each other for the first time, and that sort of thing, right? So I think overall it's a great thing for the sport. Being involved in it and having everything go down is not as fun, um, as it is for the fans who get to find out about everything. But it's at the end of the day, it's pretty exciting. Getting together with a new group of guys, and just going out and setting goals and seeing what you can go out and do. So it's pretty exciting for curling as a whole.
Tell us about your team, and you're representing a new province this year, but an old province for you, your home province of Manitoba.
Yeah, obviously super excited to come back to the home province and hopefully put on the Buffalo again. Definitely was something I wanted to do again before my career ended. At some point, luckily the career's still young, so maybe I'm home a little bit sooner than I thought I would be. But nonetheless, glad I'm back playing for Manitoba. Very very excited with the group we got. Obviously, I'm quite experienced with Colton, having played 4 years with him before, and to be able to bring in some veterans like BJ and Ryan, who have won everything there is to win, and played in all the big games. I think it's a very good mix that this team has, and it's kind of neat how it's just sort of come full circle. Like it seems like yesterday that me and Colton were getting ready to go to we had already played the World Juniors, I guess, in 2013. We were in Winnipeg watching the trials, watching Ryan go and win the trials with Jacobs, and BJ was playing with McEwen there, and just to kind of watch them. And now that we're playing with them, it's kind of funny how it's come full circle like this, and pretty darn cool opportunity for me and Colton.
Yeah, for sure. I know you and Colton have been friends for a long time. We're talking about Colton Lott here, who, of course, I think a lot of people considered maybe one of the top free agents in curling, as a guy who really wasn't affiliated with a top team last season, but did play a lot, including with your team at the Olympic trials. That's a big addition, and a guy who I think a lot of people have high expectations for. But you do get a couple of Brier champions in BJ Neufeld and Ryan Harnden. And I mean, what do you think makes that team the kind of makeup you need to get to the next level? Because we know we've seen you there in the Brier semifinals. We've seen you have great runs, but there's going to have to be something that puts you slightly over the top at this point, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, I think the fact that me and Colton are kind of split off in back end and front end too. I mean, we're kind of partnered off with our veteran, if you want to say that. I mean, me and Colton are obviously young, full of energy. And whereas BJ and Ryan have kind of been there they're able to reel us in a little bit, and just they've been in those big moments and have had all the experiences you can possibly have in curling. So that's what I'm most excited about with this combination, of the youth and the guys who have been there and done it all. And I mean, for Colt, I'm glad we picked up Colton and nobody else had the opportunity to grab him. I mean, you look at what he did at the Olympic trials in Saskatoon. I mean, to come to have 48 hours notice, 24, whatever it was, for him to fly over to Saskatoon and end up being the top third for the week. I mean, that speaks to who he is as a player. And I mean, when he signed the dotted line with us, I mean, I was on cloud nine because if people don't know now that he's one of the most talented shot makers in the planet, they're going to know very soon.
Well, you and a lot of other teams have changed their lineups. Obviously, Kevin Cooey's got a new team. Brendan Botcher, even Brad Gushu has changed his team. You name it. I mean, I probably could go through a very long list here. Mike McEwen, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that. And I think what's really going to be interesting is next week when they have the PointsBet Invitational out in Fredericton, different format. Kind of like March Madness, pretty exciting for curling to have something new like that, but also the first opportunity for many Canadian curling fans to see all these new teams in action. What are your thoughts on heading into that event?
You got to make sure you win the first couple of games so people can actually see you on TV and get a taste of the new lineup. Definitely don't want to put too much stock, I think, in like how people do, like how results go if one of the top teams, so to say, drops out right away. Like it's
Be more
a one
interesting
game.
that way anyway, Maddie.
What's that?
It would be more interesting that way, wouldn't it?
Yes, for sure, absolutely it would be. But definitely wouldn't be putting much stock into if we were to drop our first game, like, oh, this team's a disaster. That's like you can't put much stock in that. But it's a very cool thing for curling. I mean, obviously we haven't had anything like this before. It's kind of a weird mindset to get into because typically you're thinking, I mean, you gotta win or you're done sort of 2-3 days into an event where you got pre-game practice and your pre-event practice, and then it's like, well, tonight we got to win or we're hopping on a plane going home. So definitely a new experience, kind of a different mindset you're going to have to get into. But excited to see how it all plays out, see if it works. It's going to be exciting for the fans, obviously, and I hope they have a lot of fun with sort of the new fan experience with it all, get people involved. Getting some betting going. I saw today they announced there's $1 million on the line if you can guess the bracket to perfection. So yeah, it's exciting. I hope someone takes home the $1 million.
Yeah, for sure. And it would be very great for all of curling to have that kind of a thing take off. But also it's just nice to see some innovations there, right? Like, I mean, it's a sport that always has to grow. And we've talked about that so much about how can this game grow right now to kind of reach the level that it's at. Or that it could be at when it's already an Olympic sport and it's growing internationally. And this is pretty important to make that happen. And I think if you talk about this game in itself, you're going to have a situation where, sure, some teams could come in and be not at their best because this is the very first event of the season for some teams. I think it'll be the second for your team. So there is going to be a chance for some upsets, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I mean, you look how exciting it is in March Madness, like, because March Madness is obviously the equivalent of this. When you have 15th seed St. Mary's is going and making a deep run and makes the Elite Eight. It's the most exciting thing in the entire March. But at that point, the only thing more exciting is the championship game itself, right? So I'm very interested to see. I think the more upsets that happen, the better. Obviously, I don't want to be on that side of it, but you never know in a one-game showdown. And that's what makes this exciting.
All right, let's talk a bit more about innovations and the need for, new ideas in curling. And you and I have talked many times, I've talked with other curlers about this, about what Canada needs to do to reestablish itself as maybe the superpower of curling of the world. It certainly hasn't been in the last few years when you talk about world championships and the Olympics. And a lot of people wanted to see a curling summit of sorts where all of the deep thinkers of the game came together to give their input, including the curlers. I don't know that we've seen that. I understand there's been conversations. I understand there have been surveys. Wondering if you could give us, what the pulse is of all this for you as a guy who you've been outspoken about the need for some changes in the past.
Yeah, for me, like from a high performance standpoint, maybe there's a little bit of tweaks, but I mean, you look at like Brad Gushu is the #1 ranked team in the world right now. They won a bunch of Grand Slams last year. And there's a bunch of Canadian teams not too far behind that. And I mean, at the end of the day, we just have not performed at Olympics, at Worlds, which ultimately those are your big ones. But it's not like these teams that we have here are worse than Moet, Dean. We're just in the moments that matter, we're not performing the way that we want to be. So I think it's more or less that. It's not a complete reinvention of the high performance system as a whole and how we worked with our athletes to get them to the top level, because we're all there on the men's and ladies side. That's all fine. It's just a matter of, to me, it's the question is, how do we get them to perform on the international stage like we're used to seeing? Because the talent across the board as a whole is obviously all there still. What I'd like to see is just more innovation and, more excitement around fans and bringing new fans in and getting sort of a younger atmosphere. And, the amount of people I've talked to around my age, like 20 to 30 years old, they're like, yeah, I tried curling in high school. It was way harder than I thought it was going to be. But to be honest, I'd do it again, but I just don't know where to sign up, where to go. Like, how do I get involved in curling? And that to me is the biggest issue out of all of this is people in Canada, they want to do it. From my experience and who I've talked to, they want to do it. They just don't know how. They don't know the avenues, like what they need to do to go to events or even follow along. Like our point system, we have 50 different point systems we're running right now. It's not very easy to follow along. It's not very accessible right now. And that to me, I think, is where we need to be more innovative, as opposed to the high performance side, which in my opinion, I think is the high performance side has never been stronger. But unfortunately, it's never been stronger around the world as well. And that's why the results haven't been there on an international stage.
Well, I know in talking to some of the other elite curlers, especially on the men's side, and actually I spoke with Caitlin Laws today as well, and so it does sound like it's pretty similar. On the women's side, they're really focusing on trying to centralize more on practicing more than just, as opposed to just playing. Like if you're working 4 days a week and then you're taking off to go play, maybe that's not enough. And I think it sounds like a lot of teams are trying to take that European model and say the more time we spend together as a whole, the more time we practice and the more time we play, the better we're going to be. And I don't know that it's been Curling Canada that's taken up that innovation. It sounds like it's the curlers themselves.
Yeah, that's definitely been all of us. That's something we've talked about more, is like we gotta put in some time, whether it be before events, in between events, you name it. We got to find some time to get together. And you're right, that is all us doing it, taking that upon ourselves. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see sort of how that all works. Definitely kind of with my other team there in Sask. That's something we definitely focused on a lot more, kind of on the back end of the cycle. And really like the feel of that. I mean, just to be able to build confidence, just to get everybody mentally there. I think the whole idea of it does make a lot of sense. On the flip side, it's tough because we've got a point system right now that's made up where if you don't play a ton, then you don't make it anywhere in the world rankings. So it's still definitely the point system's targeted towards quantity right now, as opposed to quality, which I think is a bit of we're working through that. Hopefully that's something we can figure out sooner than later, just so teams don't have to go out and play a million events just to try and keep up and take away from that very valuable time on the practice ice, off the ice, team ball, you name it.
Are you still hopeful there will at some time be changes to the structure of the Brier and Scotties that favor, allowing Canada to, I think, produce maybe better teams for the World Championships? Or are you resigned to the fact that that's something that is going to stay the same and you're just going to have to live with it and work with that in order to, hone your craft?
Yeah, probably more the latter of what you
Yeah.
said there. I mean, I think it truly is what it is at this point, which is totally fine. Don't get the Brier, the Scott. That's what I loved growing up. On the flip side, if we're going to keep it the way it is now, then we have to be able to figure out other ways to get those teams that are in very difficult provinces who are coming up. We need to figure out ways to get them the experience they need, to be able to compete at the highest of levels. And it's tough for them to get in the Grand Slams. They're going up against heavyweights trying to win their provinces, but they're ranked 20th to 30th in the world. They're great curling teams. They haven't been able to be showcased. They haven't played in the big games just because of what they have to go through to actually get there. So I really hope, whether it be this points bet event, whether it be the Canada Cup, whether it be some sort of remix version of the Continental Cup where we keep that more Canadian based, which is something I've always asked for lately. I think those are our avenues that we need to use to be able to get those sort of teams that we haven't seen at the Brier and Scotties yet the valuable experience playing on arena ice in front of the big fans, playing the big teams. Those are the avenues we need to go with that.
Well, no matter what, Maddie, it's not going to happen overnight. And I do think that they are, like Curling Canada, my understanding anyway, is taking some initiatives in trying to come up with the right ideas to improve Canada's standing as an international power. I mean, this country won all of the gold medals at the Olympics for years, and then lately, not so much. So, and really, in a for Brad Gushue, who's clearly one of the best teams in the world, it was a battle just to get a bronze medal in Beijing. So it's something, whether you're close or not, and whether we're close or not as a curling country, well, that's maybe not good enough, because there are a lot of resources put into it, and there are a lot of the greatest curlers in the world here. You kind of expect better results. So not going to be overnight, but at least it's good that it's being talked about, right?
For sure. And, us players would be the first ones to tell you that we expect better results too, across the board. And, it's curling's in such a unique situation where we have 99% of the curlers in the world. We host 99% of the events, everything. So, I mean, the amount of people that Curling Canada has to deal with, work with to try and grow our sport right from the grassroots to the high performance level. There's a lot of moving parts in there. So that's what makes everything very difficult about curling in Canada, is just because there's so many separate things to take care of. But I can tell you for sure, on the high performance side of things, we're really trying to dial in and figure out, what do we need to do to make this work? I mean, because the last two Olympics and the most recent Worlds are just, to our standards, are not good enough. And I can tell you for sure that every team that's in the running for that sort of thing is very, very hungry.
All right. Well, Matt Dunstone, one of the top young sharpshooters in the game of curling, and always insightful. And I appreciate very much you joining us for the first edition of the season of On the Rocks. And Maddie, all the best with the season, with the PointsBet Invitational next week, and with your new team.
Thanks, Ted. Great to catch up again.
All right. For Postmedia, I'm Ted Wyman. You've been watching On the Rocks.